I feel like a lot of these people in the front office, a lot of these people up in Indy for the Fever do not care for Caitlin Clark for whatever reason. Scott Agness could be one of them. Not saying that he is, but it's looking like he don't care for Caitlin Clark. We know clear as day that Stephanie White has been looking in certain areas not to be feeling the Caitlin Clark effect.
Caitlin Clark hasn't touched a basketball court in 26 days. What started as a simple groin strain has turned into the most mysterious injury in WNBA history, and the deeper you dig, the more questions arise. Tonight, we're exposing everything the Indiana Fever doesn't want you to know. July 17th was the last time we saw Caitlin Clark play basketball. Today is August 12th, 26 days for what they're calling a groin strain. Let me put this in perspective for you. When LeBron James had a groin strain in 2018, he was back in 17 days. When Kevin Durant dealt with a similar injury, it was 12 days. Professional athletes with access to the best medical care in the world don't sit out nearly a month for pulled muscles. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Indiana Fever's story keeps changing. First, it was day-to-day. Then it became game time decision, a designation that appeared on injury reports for games everyone knew she wouldn't play. Now we're hearing a couple more weeks from team insiders. This isn't how groin strains work. This isn't how any muscle strain works. A standard groin pull, even a moderate one, has athletes back within 2 weeks maximum. We're looking at potentially 6 weeks or more. That's not a strain. That's something else entirely. Coach Stephanie White's recent press conference revealed more than she probably intended. When asked about Clark's return to practice, White said there's really no timetable for her comeback. Those are not the words you use for a minor muscle injury. Those are the words you use when you have no idea what you're dealing with. The vague language is deliberate. She's progressing, building endurance, getting more comfortable with movement. These are non-answers designed to buy time while avoiding the real questions. If this was truly just a groin strain, the timeline would be clear, the progress would be measurable, and fans would have concrete information. Instead, we're getting corporate speak that tells us absolutely nothing while creating the illusion of transparency. The Indiana Fever is treating their fan base like they can't handle the truth, and that's insulting to everyone who's invested in this team's success. Scott Agness, the Indiana sports reporter with inside access to the Fever organization, has become the unofficial bearer of bad news. When fans express optimism about Clark's return, Agness consistently shoots it down with pessimistic timelines. Have patience, at least a couple weeks, he tells fans who are desperate for good news. But here's what makes Agness's comments significant. He's not just some random reporter throwing out opinions. He has direct connections to the organization and access to information that isn't being shared publicly. When he says a couple more weeks, he's likely reflecting what he's hearing from team sources. This creates a disturbing picture. If Agness is getting information that contradicts the public optimism, it means the organization is deliberately misleading fans about the severity and timeline of Clark's injury. That's not just poor communication, that's deception. Here's something most analysts won't tell you because it's uncomfortable to discuss. Caitlin Clark underwent a significant physical transformation leading up to and during her rookie WNBA season. She added substantial muscle mass in a relatively short period, which is common for athletes transitioning from college to professional sports. But rapid muscle gain comes with risks that aren't often discussed. When you change your body composition quickly, it affects your biomechanics, your movement patterns, and your injury susceptibility. Your nervous system needs time to adapt to your new physical capabilities, and if that adaptation doesn't happen properly, injuries become more likely. Some observers noted that Clark's movement looked different in her final games before the injury. Her gait seemed slightly altered, her balance appeared off, and her usual fluid motion looked forced. Could this rapid physical transformation have contributed to whatever she's dealing with now? The timeline certainly suggests it's possible. Let's address the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. Not everyone in the Indiana Fever organization is thrilled about the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. While she's brought unprecedented attention, revenue, and success to the franchise, that level of scrutiny and expectation makes some people uncomfortable. The WNBA has operated in relative obscurity for decades. Suddenly, every decision, every injury report, every coaching choice is being analyzed by millions of fans and media members. That's a massive adjustment for an organization that's never dealt with this level of attention. There are whispers, and they're just whispers, that some within the organization view Clark's popularity as disruptive to team chemistry and league dynamics. Whether there's any truth to these rumors is unclear, but the handling of this injury situation certainly raises questions about the organization's priorities and competence. The financial implications of Clark's absence cannot be overstated. Her presence in games directly correlates with ticket sales, television ratings, and merchandise revenue. The Indiana Fever has seen growth in all these areas that would have been unimaginable just 2 years ago. This creates a complex dynamic where the organization has massive incentives to get Clark back on the court as quickly as possible, but they also face potential liability if they rush her back too soon. The game time decision listings were likely strategic moves to maintain ticket sales and fan engagement, even when team officials knew she wouldn't play. But this approach backfires when fans realize they're being manipulated. Trust, once lost, is incredibly difficult to rebuild in professional sports. The Indiana Fever is walking a dangerous line between protecting their investment and maintaining credibility with their fan base. From a purely medical standpoint, a groin injury that sidelines a professional athlete for a month suggests we're dealing with either a grade 2 or grade 3 muscle strain. Grade 2 strains involve partial muscle tears and typically require 3 to 6 weeks of recovery. Grade 3 strains involve complete muscle tears and can require months of rehabilitation. If Clark is dealing with a grade 2 strain, the organization should have been upfront about the 4-6-week timeline from the beginning. If it's a grade 3 strain, we're looking at a potentially season-ending injury that could affect her long-term career trajectory. The fact that we're still getting vague updates after nearly a month suggests the medical team either doesn't have a clear diagnosis or the organization has decided that transparency isn't in their best interest. Neither scenario inspires confidence. With only 11 games remaining in the regular season, every day Clark remains sidelined reduces the chances of the Indiana Fever making a meaningful playoff run. While they've already clinched a playoff spot, there's a massive difference between participating in the playoffs and competing for a championship. Clark's absence changes everything about how this team operates. Their offensive efficiency drops significantly, their pace slows down, and their ability to create easy scoring opportunities disappears. They become a completely different team without their primary playmaker and leading scorer. If Clark misses the remainder of the regular season, she'll be returning to playoff basketball after a month-long layoff. That's not ideal for any player, but it's particularly concerning for someone who's been carrying the offensive load for her team all season. Rust is real in professional sports, and timing is everything in playoff basketball. This situation highlights significant problems with how the WNBA handles injury reporting and communication. Unlike the NBA, which has strict requirements for injury disclosure, the WNBA operates with much more flexibility. This allows teams to be vague about player availability, but it also creates situations like this where fans are left completely in the dark. The league's handling of its biggest star's injury will set precedents for future situations. If the WNBA wants to continue growing its fan base and establishing credibility as a major professional sports league, transparent communication about player health should be non-negotiable. Based on all available information and typical recovery patterns for groin injuries, here's what we're actually looking at. If this is a grade 2 strain, Clark might return in the final week of the regular season, giving her 2-3 games to shake off the rust before playoffs begin. If it's a grade 3 strain, we might not see her until the playoffs themselves, assuming the team advances far enough for her to make a meaningful return. The couple more weeks timeline that Scott Agness has been suggesting actually aligns much more closely with medical reality than the optimistic updates we've been getting from official team sources. That should tell you everything you need to know about who's being honest and who's managing public relations. Here's what I believe is really happening, based on everything we've discussed. Caitlin Clark suffered a more serious groin injury than initially diagnosed. The medical team either misdiagnosed the severity initially or discovered complications during the recovery process. Rather than admit the mistake and provide accurate timelines, the organization chose to maintain the fiction that this was a minor injury. This approach allowed them to keep selling tickets, maintain fan engagement, and avoid difficult questions about their medical staff and training protocols. But it also created a situation where the truth becomes harder to tell with each passing day. The longer this drags on without honest communication, the more damage it does to the organization's credibility and the more it undermines fan trust. Professional sports are built on transparency and accountability, and the Indiana Fever is failing on both counts. The Indiana Fever faces a critical decision point. They can continue with the vague updates and hope Clark returns soon enough to salvage the situation, or they can finally be honest about what they're dealing with and provide fans with realistic expectations. If Clark doesn't return within the next week, serious questions need to be asked about the medical staff, the training protocols, and the organization's commitment to player health and fan transparency. This isn't just about one injury anymore. It's about how a professional sports organization operates when faced with adversity. The Caitlin Clark injury mystery has exposed fundamental problems within the Indiana Fever organization. Whether they learn from this experience or continue down the path of deception will determine not just Clark's immediate future, but the long-term credibility of the franchise. 26 days and counting. The clock is ticking, and the truth can't stay hidden forever.